Welcome, Warlords, to SAGA Thursday, your regular source for Saga goodness. I'm your host, Rodge. We're here with Mr. Adam Trunzo. How's it going, man?
Going well. How are you?
I am excellent. We're going to talk about the Moors today. Is that right?
That's right.
Excellent. So you helped us out with the Roos Princes back in May or June. So now you're back talking about the Moors. So this is a Crescent and Cross faction. So I'm expecting some guys on horses. Is that correct, sir?
You'd expect that, but this one actually can play differently. There's at least a guy on a horse, I promise you that.
Okay. Maybe a camel? I don't know. We're getting crazy here.
Lots of options.
Excellent. So you picked these guys up. You've played in an event with them. Is that right?
Yeah.
How did that go?
I only played in one big event with them. That was the Grand Melee at Adepticon, and I came in 4th place with them. Came up against some pretty tough opponents, Andy Lyons and a few others. So. Oh,
nice. Was that this year in 2017 then?
Yeah, that was this last spring.
Oh, excellent. 4th place. Excellent. What was the record then over the 5 games? You remember? 3 wins, 2 draw.
I had like 1 draw. I had like 2 draws and then like 3 or 4 major victories or whatever you call them.
Oh, nice. Spanking some butt, sounds like to me. So you are an excellent person to help us dissect the board here. So first off, why don't we just dig into their faction rules a little bit. I see the Warlord is mounted on a horse. So there's nothing going on there. And the Hearth Guards are also mounted, equipped with javelins, so the shooty variety. And they have an armor of 4 in melee due to their unwillingness to fight in close quarters. So since they're mounted, their armor would be 4 against shooting as well. So they're just kind of 4s across the board, which is kind of interesting for Hearth Guard, little fragile.
Yeah.
Why don't you get in the Warriors? Looks like the Warriors can be mounted, don't have to be.
Yep, and if they're mounted, they also have javelins, similar to Hearth Guard, and then they also have that armored ding because they also don't want to fight.
Wow.
Yeah. But otherwise, they're just straight Warriors with nothing on them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I can already see we're going to a shooting, hit and run style, perhaps. And then lastly, the levies are armed with bows. And a single unit can exchange bows for crossbows, so that's really cool. But since they're just levies, they got to take that extra fatigue at the end of the shooting, regardless, even if they're going in fresh.
Yeah,
they're getting those. But a lot of times, with the shooting units, the fatigue isn't that bad because they'll end up just burning it anyway. So, oftentimes you don't end up with huge piles of fatigue on those guys, except maybe against a cagey opponent, perhaps might do that.
Yeah. They're tough because if you want to move them and shoot them, they can get exhausted pretty quick. So
yeah, you fire one shot, boom, they're done. Interesting. Yeah. So all the mounted guys are shooty, so if you're going for melee stuff, you're going to take the foot guys. So I can, in Saga, most of the time you're going to end up in melee, whether you want to or not. Maybe some factions can get away without that with the help of their board, but most of the time you're going to end up at melee at some point. So it seems like the Warriors on foot will be good. And okay, so on the battle board, we're looking at the Crescent and Cross style. So we got the 5 normal activations up top. And to me, it looks like basically a standard loadout. With the combat pool, they got the whole options there with melee shooting and shooting reaction. Is that a correct assessment?
Yep.
So we're looking good up there. Do you want to get into the first order corruption there?
Yeah, but before that, just kind of one that I think it's cool with the Moors that ties them all together is those unit placements, kind of their options, and the fact that they're kind of unwilling to fight. I like their background because it's basically they've been fighting for a really long time, and they're tired, and they kind of don't want to fight anymore, but they're still fighting, and they don't really know why. So
okay,
a a lot of their battle board and their loadout is basically like, we don't want to die. We've been doing this for a while, so.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind. I guess my impression of the Moors comes from Song of Roland, which is basically in that tome, the Moors are just the opposite side of the medieval knights. So they're all splendid in crimson and blues and the pennants and stuff, and they shout challenges and everything like that. So that's like the high, I guess, medieval impression, which does not seem like it's probably going to jive with this battle board, but I guess we can see.
Yeah, it's mostly just Moors is just kind of the blanket term for them, but in this case, it's people in Spain who've been fighting for a really long time with the Spanish.
Okay, the Spanish, they're cagey. They wear you down.
They are cagey.
Okay, yeah. So you want to do corruption there?
So corruption, it's an order's reaction. Can only be used immediately after your opponent rolled their saga dice. Pick a saga dice of your opponent. You get to roll one of your opponent's saga dice, which is always kind of fun. You say, give me that.
Give me that dice.
They get whatever they get, and they get to put it on their board, but then you can take an unused saga dice, and since this one's a common, you take it and you put it on a rare. And then you can put the rare anywhere on your board, and you can use it immediately if you want.
Oh, interesting. Roll it, take one here.
Yeah, so this one is really good for flexibility. So you throw it up there in your turn, obviously, and it's just a common. And then depending on how your turn turns out, you can choose to do put it kind of where on your board you can mess with your opponent the most, kind of seeing what their plan is, and if you were caught out by something of theirs.
Okay, so it gives you that rare, gives you that flexibility after your turn to be able to sort of react to what's going on. I guess it helps them a little bit along the way. But so do you end up using this one typically?
Yeah, I typically use it. It's your best chance, and it also just kind of puts a little bit of pressure on the opponent because they know that you're going to get a rare. And, if they don't look at your board a whole lot, they're like, oh, this guy's getting a rare on my turn. I need to be careful what I do. And it makes them decide things on their turn just by having a little common dice there. So.
Okay, cool. Already messing with the opponent's mind, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go down to Song of Drums. So this is 2 common dice activation ability. So one thing I want to point out is this is one ability that requires 2 dice, and it looks like there's 5 abilities that require 2 dice on this board. So I don't know if these are all good ones that you want to use, but looks like a particularly dice-intensive board so far. But back to Song of Drums, activate all your units that are not equipped with ranged weapons. So that's interesting. So we know the Hearthguard will be mounted with ranged weapons. So it's not going to affect the Hearthguard. It's not going to affect the levies. Basically, this is going to be your Warlord. Does the Warlord have a javelin or not?
No, Warlord's just the Warlord, yep.
Just the regular bro. So he'll get to activate by this, it looks like. And then your Warriors on foot. So
yeah.
That's interesting.
So this will dictate a lot of times your entire warband setup. So
I was gonna say it's a weird contrast of what it seems like by the list is putting you towards shooting, just with your options. But then you got this really great ability here that's just going to be used on the foot sloggers mainly. Yeah,
so you kind of have to decide early on whether or not you're going to lean in really hard to this particular ability. And so a lot of times the common consensus is you put 5 of your points into foot warriors in any given warband, and then that 6th point can kind of float in a lot of different directions. And what that does is it means that you can have little 4-man units running around generating saga dice, but they can also all move every turn pretty much no matter what, because you got 2 commons. It's been a rare time that I don't get 2 commons, and they always go into this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the fact that you can, through corruption, always get that rare dice, you just use your rare dice and you blow them up into 2 dice anyways, getting as many dice as you want.
Good deal. Yeah, that's a good point about having those smaller units. So even if you didn't take 5 points, you only took 2 or 3 points. But if you split them in, you could do 4 to 6 4-man units, which normally would be pretty untenable for most armies. But all of a sudden you have this weird capability with these guys where you could have a bunch of small units if you wanted. But yeah, definitely you get more mileage the more units. So if you're taking a couple points of Hearthguard, point of Levy, and then some warriors on foot, warriors mounted, you're not going to get much out of this at all.
And because it's multiple simultaneous activations, it goes off of that rule. You can kind of see how one activation works, and then pick the next unit and pick the next unit. And that order also plays into really well how you want to play your game. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. You're going to get to see how each one of these melees potentially resolves itself. If you need to go in, you can go ahead and do so. So, yeah, it looks like a pretty decent ability here. Do you want to go down to Impaling Spears, another 2-dicer?
Yeah, so we've looked at kind of like one that messes with the opponent and one that moves your stuff around. Now, we see several along this line where it's defensive. So Impaling Spears, it's 2 uncommons, which is pretty hefty, but it may only be used if your unit has been engaged in melee and is not equipped with ranged weapons. So it's one of those that benefits units that don't have ranged weapons.
What the heck?
And this one's special because it gives your opponent a choice. They can either choose to have all of their engaged units discard half their attack dice, so they just whiff. They get nothing, or all of my units get +2 to my attack dice.
Whoa, +2?
Yeah, so
wow.
They have to choose between murder on all sides or something boring, and I often frame it that way. It's like, you can do the boring thing or you can do the exciting thing. And most of the time, they take the exciting thing.
Wow, +2 to your attack dice. Yeah, that's pretty bananas. I guess I'd probably go for the discard half the attack dice if I was on the receiving end of this most times. But wow, pretty good. So for two dice, and it's going to be usable on your foot warriors, although I guess your warlord again could be affected by this. Do you end up using this a lot? Do most people just discard half their attack dice, kind of take the safe route?
I've only used this a couple times, and the way the Moors board is set up, you kind of have to choose on any given turn whether you're going to try to disrupt your opponent's plans or stick really hard with combat and defense. And it's not very common that you have to stick with this sort of weird defensive double uncommon route.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it doesn't sound like you particularly indulge in this ability that often.
No, unless you need to hold, you're across the board and you have to hold it, or you're on sacred ground and you've been there for a turn and then you're gonna hunker down hard.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Two uncommons not a given.
Yeah, and again, really limited to the units that could benefit from this. So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to go on to the Fury of Swords. This is a melee ability. This is another one I see may not be used by units equipped with ranged weapons.
Yeah.
So with all these limitations, man.
Yeah, interesting because you either fight your board and get a full range of stuff, or you just stick with the warriors and get all the goods.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to see how these abilities develop, but yeah, that's weird. It's pointing you so hard towards the foot sloggers. But this ability gained a number of attack dice and a number of defense dice equal to 1/3 of the number of models in your unit. So looking at a nice big unit of 12 guys, that would be a hefty 4 attack and 4 defense. So wow, yeah, that is definitely not too shabby. That's better than the Anglo-Saxon bonuses for most of their units. You have to combine 2 2 or 3 abilities to get those kind of dice numbers typically. So yeah, that's cool. You straight up get the same number of defense dice.
Yeah,
because those are pretty hard to get.
So this is a really good one. One thing it does affect, it can affect your building of your units at the very beginning of the game when you create your warband, because you can create units of 10 and units of 7 that both get the benefit of a unit of 12 or a unit of 9, respectively. They still get the 4 because you wrap it up.
True.
So even a unit of 10 will still get all 4 and 4. So that's one thing. And then this one also works with corruption, where you can take that common die, turn it to a rare, and stick it right here on their turn and say, "Come at me."
Oh yeah, that's definitely a solid rare dice play there. You're gonna get some value out of that. Good deal. Yeah, solid ability. Although I guess it is a rare, but you can at least count on the rare for this particular board, it would seem. Do you want to go up to Dance of Spears?
Yeah, so Dance with Spears, it's 2 commons. Again, may not be used by units equipped with ranged weapons.
The fourth one? Why did they just come up with a blanket? Some boards have a symbol, that these ones can't be used by these guys. I don't know. Yeah. I didn't write it, but...
I didn't write it either. So during step 1 of this melee, so it's important, it's a melee reaction, so it's not a melee.
One thing to clarify there.
Yeah. All units engaged in this melee only generate half their normal number of attack dice, but gain a number of defense dice equal to the number of attack dice generated.
Okay.
So this happens before you choose to do anything with any of your Saga abilities. So the Saga abilities that they charge in and they're going to double their attacks. But even before, and they're like, well, I get to go first, so I'll double them before you get to subtract anything from it. It's like, no, I get to go first.
That's a good point. So it's going to limit the effectiveness of those Saga abilities by half, just on the merits of being a melee reaction ability versus a typical melee. So it looks like it affects all the units, though. So it's going to be a big slap fest on both sides. And then, so they gain a number of defense dice equal to the number of attack dice generated. So, okay, I'm trying to picture this in my mind. So everybody's going to have 3 attack dice and then 3 defense dice at the start?
So, let's say you're charged by a unit of 5 Hearthguard and you got 4 warriors.
Okay.
Those 5 Hearthguard go from 10 attacks down to 5 attacks, and they gain 5 defense dice. And your 4 guys start with the 4 attack dice, and they're down to 2 attack dice and 2 defense dice.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, so that is going to be basically almost kind of nullifies a combat. It's going to be tough to get wounds through unless you have abilities you're going to play after, but everything being even on a normal just dice rolls like that, it seems like it'd be really tough for anybody to do anything. Is that right?
It is, but it also skews the combat just a little bit in the favor of if you have a smaller unit, because they only ever get the maximum number of defense dice equal to the number of hits they got. So if you only hit them once, they still only get 1 defense dice, even though they got 5 because they traded them all in.
Okay, that's true.
Whereas you'll always, you'll usually get, the full number of defense dice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, if you're willing to blow 4 Saga dice, you can combo that with Impaling Spears to most likely take them down to a quarter.
Yep, Impaling Dancing Spear.
Be using half or 2/3 of your Saga dice, but you can really shut down that combat. Although you could basically use them if you have those situations where they're coming in with the same unit multiple times, having those lined up, you'd almost kind of nullify 2 combats potentially by having those stacked up if you really needed to be sticking to some defensive position. So interesting. Yeah, so it's interesting you talk about that it kind of benefits smaller units, where Furious Swords kind of benefits bigger units. Mm-hmm. And then Song and Drums is kind of benefiting smaller units again, because more units, you're getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So even within this, it kind of seems like it's pulling you in several directions here.
Yeah, but even that's good. I mean, in a typical Morris force, you'll have a couple of those Bigfoot units, and then a couple of smaller units, and then the rest you fill in. Like, the other cool thing about this is those, with it being a melee reaction that actually affects the attack and defense dice, is it bypasses those, like, you don't get a step 3. I think it's like the Welsh or somebody gets.
Okay, yeah, Militus Christi
yeah.
has one as well. So there's a few of them out there, so that's good to point out. No stopping this one. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to go down to Discourt. This is a uncommon or a rare dice activation reaction ability. No limitations here except that use this ability when an opponent activates a unit to rest. I like this because it seems like you're probably going to fuck them over. And I'm going to read on and find out for sure. Add 1 fatigue to any other unit that is within medium of the resting unit. Add 2 fatigues instead to that unit if you discard a rare. Oh, okay. So enemies got to be bunched up a little bit, but most of the time you will have other units on your side that are going to be within medium. So add a fatigue, and you're in control of this. So if there's multiple units, you can choose to put on the Hearthguard or the Warlord, whatever you want. It's an uncommon die. I like the 2 fatigues for the rare. Do you use this one frequently?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't use it until there's some sort of engagement with the enemy. It pairs well with the next one, which, like you said, it only works if they're clumped together, but the Moors are a very unique faction, and their key thing is they clump enemies together. But this can also be used with Corruption, so that one that you turn the common die to a rare die. So this is another one that you can throw out there on their turn.
Yeah, good deal.
And medium's a long distance when you're talking about within an opponent's battle line. And if their Warlord took a fatigue through one of their own, one of their own Saga board abilities, there's various things that do that. All of a sudden, their Warlord sheds that fatigue, but like you said, you throw it on a Hearthguard or somebody else close by.
Yeah, so it's the kind of ability just having it on there might encourage your opponent not to even plan to rest at all, which works into your plans as well.
Yeah.
They're going to rest one unit, but you're going to screw over some other unit. So, even if they say, I'm not going to rest anything, it's still, okay. I'm fine with that. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that pulls an opponent in different directions and makes them seize up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if they're kind of cagey or wary of this, they might purposely move their units out. You're talking about there's ways to bring them back in, but that's something you can take advantage of as well.
Oh yeah.
If they're not basically supporting their units because they're too worried about a fatigue going on somebody else.
And it just creates a spiral of fatigue because there's in particular, there's some dogs of war and different things that can just pile fatigue on units. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to do Moore's Gold?
Yes. So this is along with Song of Drums are like the 2 keynote or the key pieces that make the Moors work.
Okay.
So this one.
Yeah, I think I've heard it talked about a lot. I've heard the Moore's Gold mentioned many a time. So I'm eagerly awaiting the description here.
Yes, so it's either an uncommon or a rare. It's an order's reaction. Until the end of the current turn, each time your opponent activates one of his units that is more than medium away from his Warlord takes 1 fatigue. So, this one's really good because, again, we're talking about that medium. So he wants to get his units within medium, but then if they have fatigues, all of a sudden they can't take that fatigue off because of Discourt.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah, that is pretty brutal. I think I would rather face the Discourt. If I had to choose between those, whether spreading out or bunching up, I think the Discourt is probably the lighter hit of the 2 potentially here. Wow.
Well, what's interesting Well, this one too is that it's messing with your opponent even before the game starts. They see that Moore's Gold, and they have to make a decision even before the game. They say, am I going to have my Warlord this game and just have free run of the board, or am I going to have to be forced to clump up together and move in one brick? So you're already dictating enemies, deployment style, movement, everything's set up even before the game starts.
That's true. Yeah, it really. There's certain play styles that can rely. I'm thinking of big mounted Hearthguard units are some of the most obvious ones where they go out, strike hard, and then they come back. So, yeah, if you want to do that, your Warlord is basically done for the game.
Yeah.
And
there are units, there are armies that say, I don't care. You have the Byzantines, you have the steppe tribes. They're like, yeah, that's okay. I won't use my Warlord because their tactics depend so much on spreading the board.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, I just played a couple games with the Byzantines, and yeah, this one probably be all right with this trade-off here if I have to suffer it. So the Moore's Gold, very, very interesting. Leaving the
and
Warlord
again, that's
exposed.
one that you can use with corruption too. So. You can flip it to that rare dice and plop it down on Moore's Gold.
Yeah, exactly. So you could kind of dictate how their turn goes. If you're going to use it for Discourt or Moore's Gold, they might try to do the opposite of whatever you're up to. So, good deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Since we're going a little bit long as usual, that's where we're going to wrap up part 1 of our review of the Moore's Battle Board. We're going to be back next week with part 2, talking to Mr. Trunzo once again. If you have any questions about what you've heard so far or any comments, please post that below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, all that stuff. I'm going to see you guys next week. Saga!